After the year we've had, accessing happiness during challenging times makes for such a topical conversation. Welcome back. I'm Gila Ross, host of the Power Up podcast, and in this episode, together with the Wednesday night discussion group, we look at this topic and see how we can bring more happiness into our lives. So let me tell you how this class came to be. So as a lot of you know, I have a couple of girls in high school. I have a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old, and the high school, they wanted me to come in on Tuesday, yesterday, to like be on a panel for their year 11, because they've all taken the GCSEs, but they're trying to keep them busy. So my 14-year-old was obviously very, very concerned about the important thing, right? I was like the night before, Monday night, she was telling me, so what are you gonna wear? So I said the topic that they gave me was finding happiness in challenging times. So I said to her, well, actually, I'm thinking a little bit more about what I should say rather than what I should wear. And she's like, no, what you're gonna say doesn't matter. As long as you look okay, it's fine. But so that's why I was thinking a little bit about the topic, finding happiness in challenging times. So I wanted to throw the question out to you. Is it realistic? Is it possible? And some of you have had a little bit of a heads up on what the topic is, so you're gonna share your wisdom with us. Any thoughts, anyone? This is open to everyone, in person, Zoom, Instagram. Anyone wants to weigh in and tell us what you think, please share.
Yes, I think it's got to do with your frame of mind, your outlook.
So, outlook on life. Oh, interesting. That's very interesting.
And focusing on like the real importance, like maybe what made you happy beforehand has changed. Like probably focus more on.
Well, it's concentrating on the important things, like during lockdown, as you say. Well, during the first lockdown, we were spending more time as a family, going on family walks and being adventurous. And me and my husband had a big birthday. And then I'm like, what can you do? So I was trying to think carefully. And what I planned, I wouldn't have planned had it not been locked down. And we both agreed that, because it was mine about 10 days later, that what we did made it more special. Because it was more thought, more planning, and it was, wasn't it? It was a better birthday than had we just done an ordinary party and whatever. It was more special, so it is what you make of it.
Okay, well, it is what you make of it. What about over to you on Zoom? Anyone wants to share anything?
Yeah, I think you need to just look at all the positives and try and see if the positives outweigh the negatives, or if you can make something good out of a bad situation.
Okay. Anyone else wants to share anything?
Try and focus on what you do have rather than what you don't have, even if you haven't got a lot.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I think that challenging times, like, it has a big span. So for instance, we've had over a year of this, which has been really challenging, but in that there's been moments of happiness. So challenging doesn't necessarily mean.
And I would also say, Karen is raising a good point, is that there's different, there's the big challenges, and sometimes even the small moments can affect our happiness, right? Like the times where you come downstairs and you realize that you're out of coffee, and it just throws your whole day off. Let's try and get back to basics kind of thing, and try and sort of figure out what is happiness, right? Because it's a word that we use a lot. It's a word that I think we think about a lot, consciously or subconsciously. But what, if you're asked to kind of what defines, how would you define happiness? What would you say?
Family, friends.
Okay.
Contentment.
Although family and friends can sometimes be a cause of Unhappy.
Not contentment. Yeah. Choose your friends wisely.
Let's see it as it is, right? Oh, yes. Okay, anyone else wants to share anything? What do you think happiness is? And it doesn't just necessarily mean like to share what makes us happy, but just try and like define what is happiness.
I think it's
Smiling
feeling.
and feeling good.
Smiling or feeling good, yeah. Something you enjoy. It's a good one. It's
come from within, you know.
okay. So you're saying that that it's a deeper thing, right? Okay. Marcia, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, I think somebody just said it actually. I think it comes from within. It's something within yourself. I think some people look to others or even to material things to make them happy, but I think it's within. I think you could have everything you wanted in the world materialistically, but if you're not actually happy within yourself, you won't be happy.
Yeah.
Right. Which I think is very, very accurate.
Yeah.
But it brings us back to that question of what gives us that feeling of happiness within. If it's
Sorry.
not just the things that we have or the family or the friends, although they can contribute or they can diminish. But what is that feeling within that gives us happiness?
The actions that you can give like a friend that makes them happy.
Okay, and Sharon is saying something very similar, that making someone else happy. You know, I'm going to just play devil's advocate because I think you're right, but and I think it's sometimes it's a little bit of a dangerous slope to go down, and I'll share with you an experience from I think that we have as parents, right? But I think you can generalize this with any sort of relationship. But sometimes we're so invested in making other people happy, right? And as I think as a parent, you can really sort of think about it, and it's not within our control, right? You can do and you can give, and you could, even to give Lindsay's example, you could do and you could give a beautiful thing to someone else, and they won't be happy, or it won't hit the spot. I'm remembering a story. It's actually quite a humorous story now that I'm looking back at it like 5 years on. So when we lived in Vancouver, Canada, and there was a very small kosher community, right? Very small community of families that kept kosher. So anytime someone had a baby, one of the things I like to do, and they kept kosher, I would try and send a meal over, because there weren't that many of us to do that, even if I didn't necessarily know the families that well. So there was a family that I didn't really know, I knew of them, and they had a baby, and someone mentioned they had a baby and they were doing a meal train. So I signed up for the meal train, and I signed up to send them over a Shabbat dinner. So on Friday morning, I made the dinner, and I sent Samuel to send it over, and he has the address, and he goes to he goes to drop it off, and he calls the phone number because there's no answer, and the person answers and says, what do you mean? You're not supposed to be giving us a meal today. Like, someone else is supposed to be giving us a meal train today. And like, now when I look back at it, it's actually quite humorous, especially since like I was the one that made a meal, but I was at home, and my husband's dropping it off and like calling me and saying, you weren't supposed to send them a meal, right? You can imagine the text and the phone conversation, right? But my point with this is that in such a situation, it's very easy to kind of feel like, you know, I tried to do something for someone else, I tried to make them happy, and I just missed the mark, right? And I think there's two kinds of perspectives that we can have in such a situation, and one will lead us to happiness and one will lead us away from happiness. What are those two? And I see Karen is nodding. So what are those two different perspectives? And anyone wants to guess, what are the two different perspectives? I mean, I think the first perspective, we can all guess. What is the first perspective that we would feel?
Hurt.
hurt, like,
Disappointed that you've
yeah,
tried
like,
so hard.
what do you mean? I went through all that trouble and you know, you double check, and yes, I did sign up for it. And right, that's sorry, that sort of perspective of and it's very easy to feel disappointed and down on ourselves. What's another way of looking at it? And then I'll tell you the end of the story.
You could be happy that actually they're already sorted, they've already got what they need.
Yes, yes, definitely. They're not going to go hungry. They've got plenty, yeah, and something
Having a bad morning.
even more basic than that.
You should feel happy that the other person's done the right thing as well, maybe.
Oh, well, the other person that gave them the meal.
Yeah.
Okay, but what about yourself? What about our perspective on what I've done?
You don't need to cook for yourself.
You've got them.
Right. Well, okay, I'll share with you the end of the story. The end of the story is my husband left the food there, and after Shabbat or whatever, she called me back and she was like, she was a first-time mum, so her, whatever, baby brain, whatever it was, and she's like, I didn't understand, and I was downtown, and I misunderstood, and of course, you know, thank you so much, and it was very much appreciated. So I don't know what the mix-up was about, but I think at the time there was a frustration, and what do you mean? Like, I went to travel, and whatever, for some people it's an easy thing to do. For me, like, menu planning and cooking and whatever, it's complete pain, right? All the shopping, and like, especially when you're cooking for someone else, you gotta like make sure you've got all the different bits, right? It's an effort, but not at the time. But afterwards, I realized to myself, hold on a second, the fact that I went through all that trouble and I did something kind for someone else, just because it didn't hit the mark doesn't make that any less of a kindness that I did, right? We're very, very much, we live in a society very much that's focused on results. Like, you know, you think about it, when you went to school, were you ever asked, maybe now it's changing the school system, I don't know, but were you ever asked at the end of the report term, how much effort did you put in? If anyone ever got an effort award, how do you feel? You feel like, I didn't make it as an achievement, so they gave me an effort reward, right? We feel like achievement is where achievements where it's at, but the reality is, and Judaism's take on this is completely different, and I'll share with you why. Because happiness, I'm going to throw out a definition, you'll let me know what you think about it. Happiness is what we experience when we are doing what we know that we should be doing, right? That's what happiness is. So does that make sense? That when we are doing what we know that we should be doing, that gives us happiness. Now think about a time and also not a discussion for now, there's a difference between pleasure and happiness, right? Like when you're sitting, or comfort and happiness, when you're sitting on I won't say that word, a beach. I know a bit of a sore point for some people right now, but when you're sitting on a beach and you're enjoying yourself, it's not necessarily happiness, right? You might it is pure joy and pleasure, but not necessarily happiness, right? And what's the difference is happiness is it lasts, right? When you come back from the beach, right? Do you feel energized? Well, yes, but like do you get what I mean? And
It's short-lived.
A different discussion, but do you get what I mean? Like happiness is that contentment, right? That lasts. Like it's the, you know, having a great time, and it's pleasure, it's joy, it's fun, and there's a place for that definitely in life, but it doesn't necessarily lead to happiness, right? Because when that's over, what are we left with, right? When we're back in mind, what is it? What is right? Definitely. What are we left with, right? And happiness is not necessarily a look with a smile on your face. Like think about a time when you achieved something that you worked really hard for.
Yeah, I did. I finished my degree whilst I was working full time. That was really hard work.
And how did you feel about it?
Afterwards, I was so glad that I'd done it, but relieved that it was over as well, because it was really tough.
Right. So you I think you have two things here. It can be like, also if you think about it, like imagine if an alien dropped onto planet Earth, right? And I don't know, there are different people with different relationships to exercise in the gym. But imagine if they saw someone who was at the gym, and they think to themselves, oh my goodness, you know, this person, like they see, all they could see is through the glass window, and they see someone who's like sweating and working so hard. They probably think, oh my goodness, this person is like being like slave labor, right? Like they're being tortured. This poor guy got kidnapped and he's being tortured. What do we know is that not only is the person not being tortured, they are going voluntarily and they're paying for the privilege of it, right? You know, I run half marathons sometimes, and my daughter, she's 11 or 12, she was 11 at the time. So I was like, when I finished one, she's like, she said to me, I don't know how it came out, but I mentioned to her that I paid to do the half marathon. And she thought I was absolutely mad. And she's like, you ran for 2.5 hours. And on top of that, you actually paid. Like, she was like, why did you do it? Because you got something or you got a medal. I was like, no, I paid for it. Right? Like, we realize that sometimes. So what I'm showing here, and maybe we'll do it another week, because I think it's a good distinction, the distinction between pleasure, comfort, and happiness. But sometimes pain can equal happiness, right? Yes. Think about it. What you know, if you have kids, what is your greatest pain in your life? Or if you ask your parents what their greatest pain is.
The child.
No, it's kids. It's kids.
Mm.
Joe, if I can, it's our kids. In all our life, it's our kids that is the greatest pain, right? What is the greatest pleasure? Our kids, right? Our kids as well. And you know, it's right, which goes to show, and again, maybe we'll do this I'm going to go out on a limb here and suggest that you're not threatening to adopt more kids. No, because we could talk. Anyway, so what's my point of this is that there's a distinction between happiness and pleasure. Maybe we'll look into it a little bit another time. If happiness is the feeling we experience when we are doing what we know that we should be doing, what is this thing that we know we should be doing?
Surrounding yourself with good people makes you happy.
I'm sure our kids are doing the right thing.
Even more basic than that, because before we can make sure our kids are doing the right thing, we need to be doing the right
thing.
Yeah.
Carrying out the 613
Oh, good. Sharon, do you want to repeat it for everyone? So the truth, look, the truth of the matter is that the Talmud tells us that we're supposed to think, we're supposed to think bishvili nivra ha'olam, which means in the translation of that is the whole world was created for me, right? Which, anyone has a question on that? Okay, I don't want anyone walking out of or switching off from the Zoom and driving down the road and thinking, I own the road because the Talmud says. Right. You know, the world was created for me. Again, it's another topic, because there's another one. There's another piece of Talmud that tells us that we're supposed to think that we are made from dust, and at the end of the time, we're going to go to dust, right? Which is two very different ideas that we're supposed to have about ourselves. On the one hand, this humility of knowing that, you know, we came from dust, we're going to go to dust. On the other hand, feeling like the world was created from me. So when are we supposed to have each one? And there's a story that says that a person's supposed to have one in each pocket, and they have to know when to pick out the one that says, feel like the whole world was created for me, and another time when we have to know when to feel like, you know, I come from dust, I'm going to go from dust. But what does it mean to feel like the whole world was created for me? This is what it means. It means that, you know, think back to when we went to school, right? You go to school and you start in kindergarten, reception, whatever it is, and you have a curriculum to go through. Now, it doesn't matter who you are, or how bright you are, or how academic you are, or how artistic you are, or whatever. In order to get from kindergarten to end of GCSEs, you have to cover certain points. And the curriculum is just kind of general, and the teachers do as good a job as they can to help each child succeed within it. That's not life. Life, what we're told is the world is created for me, which means that that everything that happens is created for me, because life is a curriculum for my soul, right? Now think about that. Think about it, because when we adopt that mindset, it means that every single thing that happens because there's something in my soul that I'm supposed to develop. So let me go back to that story that I was telling you about in Vancouver when I made that meal. So when I made that meal, I thought to myself, wow, I'm flexing my kindness muscles, right? I'm being so kind. I'm helping out a new mom. I'm making her a meal. Meanwhile, Bishvilia Nivra Olam means that God created this entire world, and God orchestrated this situation so that I would be left with a situation where my husband's trying to drop off a meal, and the woman's like saying, I don't think you've got the right person or whatever. And perhaps what I was meant to develop there was not kindness muscle, but humble pie muscle, right? Like where I'm supposed to maybe develop my thinking of someone else or whatever, right? And if you think about it, it so often happens in our life, right? You know, and again, obviously we have to have plans and we have to have goals, and we can't advance in our spiritual journey, we can't advance in our Jewish journey unless we have those goals and those plans. As Sharon said, obviously we're here to perfect our souls, to connect with God, to do the mitzvot. But what this also means is that we've got to have a little bit of a flexibility with it. And when God throws us challenges, I heard from someone, and I think it's something that sometimes we experience in our life. I heard from someone who said that they're advancing in their Jewish journey, and they're really an incredible person. And her phrase to me was, I feel like I've, you know, since I've taken on for this specific person, it was the Shabbat journey. And since I've taken that on, like I've got every single obstacle in my path. Now, at that point, a person has two options, right? They can say to themselves, right, every obstacle. So I know Bishvili Nivra, I know that the world's created me. I know that this is being orchestrated. That I trust. I have faith, and they can say perhaps it's not meant to be. But what's really happening here is that what we should think is that these obstacles are being thrown in my path to develop my soul, to bring my soul to perfection, right? So we think the obstacles are there telling us, oh, come on, give up, it's too hard. That's not what they're telling us. They're telling us, beat me so you can become great, right? And when we adopt that mindset, that every single thing that is being thrown at us is there specifically for our soul, to bring our soul to its perfection, and then that brings us to happiness, right? Because yes, the way I like to say it is, you've got two choices. Then you either win or you learn, right? You either overcome the obstacle and you've won, or we mess up because we're human, in which case we learn how to do better next time. And when a person can sort of adopt that mindset, that everything that happens is tailor-made for me, in order for me to develop my soul and to bring my soul to perfection, and whatever's being thrown at me, whether it's something that looks helpful or whether it's something that's an obstacle, is there to help my soul achieve its perfection, then all I've got to do is I've got to take those challenges, I've got to take whatever throws at me, and I've got to keep on going. I've got to keep on going. I'll end with one final idea, which I heard, which I think really brings it home to us. A lot of times people that run their own business run into a problem. Why? What's the problem? Is because when you no problem. Bless you. Is that what that's what? When a lot of times people, when you run your own business, what you have to do is you have to keep on putting yourself out there. And when you keep on putting yourself out there, you keep on getting no's, and no's are very disheartening. So a person who's running their business can often feel like, oh, I've tried so hard, I'm giving up, right? Or I'm not trying, today I just can't take any more no's. I'm not going to make any more phone calls or effort, whatever. Someone who works for someone else, they just keep on plugging away. Right? They don't walk in the day and say, oh, today I feel like giving it my all. I mean, to a level they do, but it's not the same, right? Because a person, they realize I'm working from 9 to 5 and I do it, right? And whatever the results are, the results are. And I think it's the same thing with when it comes to living our life and living our life as a soul curriculum, as a curriculum for our soul, is that we get up in the morning, we remind ourselves that this is the mindset, that whatever is going to happen is there to grow my soul. And I just need to keep plugging away. And when we know this and we do this, that is what gives us that deep sense of contentment, of happiness, because we know that we are doing what we have to do. Thank you for taking the time to listen. I'd love to hear your thoughts and your feedback. You can get in touch with me. You can find me on Instagram at Gila Ross. And please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe to the Power Up podcast. Thank you and have a wonderful day.